I was never a paranoid person. I always thought those stalker stories were just exaggerations from people who watched too many horror videos on the internet. But I was wrong. Wrong in a way I could never have imagined. My name is Lillian. I'm 23 years old and I live in Seattle, Washington. This happened a year ago, and to this day, when night falls, I find myself looking over my shoulder, expecting the worst to happen in this hellish life. Ever since this nightmare happened to me, it all started innocently enough. I met Nathan on a dating app. His profile seemed normal. A 26-year-old guy, worked in technology, lived nearby. He was handsome, muscular, and seemed smart. Our first conversation was good enough to arrange a quick coffee. I always preferred public places for first dates. The truth is, he didn't impress me much. He was polite, but there was something about him hard to describe. A restlessness in the way he looked at me, as if he was analyzing every detail, memorizing it. But I ignored it. Maybe it was just my imagination. Our second date was at a bar. A few drinks helped break the ice, and for a while I thought I had judged him wrong. Our third outing was dinner, and that's when the signs started to show. He was too intense, paying attention to every tiny detail of my life, remembering silly things I mentioned in passing. He insisted on touching me frequently, nothing grotesque, but enough to make me uncomfortable. By the end of the night, when he tried to kiss me, I hesitated, but I let it happen. That was a mistake. After that, the messages became more frequent. He'd ask about my day, what I was doing, if I had eaten. When I took too long to reply, there would be question marks. A lot of them. I found it strange, but I ignored it. Maybe he was just a needy guy. Our fourth date was the last. We arranged to meet again at a bar, but this time my mind wasn't on the date. I wasn't excited. I started paying more attention to him, and every gesture, every look, every touch felt more invasive than before. Nathan drank quickly, very quickly. His hand would rest on my knee, move up my arm. I would discreetly move away, but he kept insisting. I tried to end the night early. I said I was tired. He didn't like that. "Let's go to my house," he suggested with an exaggerated smile. "Not today. I'm exhausted and I have to work tomorrow." I lied. His smile disappeared for a second. His eyes darkened in a strange way. Then he laughed. "I'll take you to work tomorrow then." "You don't have to." He became serious. Something in his expression gave me a real instinctive chill. I decided to leave. I grabbed my coat and walked to the parking lot. He followed me. When I reached my car, before I could open the door, he grabbed my arm. "Didn't you like the night?" The pressure of his fingers was subtle, but I could feel the tension. I liked it. "I'm just tired. We'll talk, okay?" I forced a smile and pulled away. He stood there watching me in a way I had never seen before. I got in the car and drove away. I just wanted to get home and forget about that night. But that's when I noticed the headlights behind me were always there. I made a few turns. The car was still there. My heart started racing. I grabbed my phone and typed, "Are you following me?" The reply came in seconds. "Yes. I just want to make sure you get home safely." My stomach twisted. That wasn't normal behavior. I called him, but he didn't answer. My mind was spinning. What if I go straight home? He'll know where I live. What if I stop? What if he gets out of the car? I stopped at a gas station. He did too. I couldn't take it anymore. I got out of the car and stared at his, parked a few meters behind. The windows were dark, but I knew he was watching me. I sent a message. "Go away. I'm fine." For a few seconds, nothing. Then the car sped off and disappeared. I tried to breathe, but something inside me told me it wasn't over. And I was right. After that night, I blocked Nathan from all social media. I tried to move on with my life, but a persistent discomfort followed me. Every time I left my house, I felt like I was being watched. In the following days, the calls from unknown numbers started. The phone rang at strange times, 2 a.m., 5 p.m., midnight. When I answered, there was silence. It was him. A week later, when I got home from work, I found a bouquet of red roses at my apartment door. There was no sender, just a card with 2 words, "I miss you." My body went cold. He knew where I lived. That night, I locked all the doors and windows. I tried to sleep, but I woke up to a noise, a sharp click, the unmistakable sound of a door opening. My eyes opened in the dark, my heart pounding. I stayed still, trying to understand if it was a dream or if this was really happening. Then I heard footsteps, slow, cautious, inside my house. I forced myself not to panic. I grabbed my phone from the nightstand, swiped to the call screen light, and dialed 911. They answered quickly. 911, what's the emergency? I whispered as quietly as I could. There's someone inside my house. The operator asked for my address and instructed me to lock myself in. But I couldn't move. I knew any sound could give away my presence. The door to my room was closed, but then the doorknob turned. He was there. I held my breath. The room was dark, but I could see the shadow of feet standing at the bottom crack of the door. Long seconds passed. Time distorted. Then a soft sound. The door creaked open slowly. The silhouette entered. I slid under the bed, gripping the phone tightly. My heart beat so loudly I was sure he could hear it. Nathan walked over to my dresser. He started opening drawers. I could see his feet moving across the room, calmly, as if he had all the time in the world. My body was frozen. I could barely breathe. Then he stopped. He stood there, silent. And then he sat on the bed. My eyes were fixed on the edge of the mattress, where the folds of the sheet touched the floor. I saw the weight of his body sink into the fabric. He didn't say a word. Why was he there? What did he want? Seconds felt like hours. Then I heard his voice in a nearly frustrated tone. Why do you do this to me? I stayed there, under the bed, listening to every sound. The weight was unbearable. The silence, the footsteps on the stairs, the front door closing. Only when I heard the police sirens did I allow myself to truly breathe. I ran to the door and unlocked it, practically collapsing into the arms of the officers. My whole body was shaking. They did a full sweep of the house, but Nathan was already gone. No broken doors, no smashed windows. He had a copy of the key. I showed them all the messages, told them about the calls and the bouquet. The police filed the case, but they said that without concrete proof of invasion or direct threat, he couldn't be arrested. The only thing I managed to get was a restraining order. But the fear didn't go away. In the following weeks, every time I heard a noise at night, my heart raced. Every time I saw a car that looked like his, my skin crawled. I sold the apartment and moved in with my parents. I changed my number, blocked everything I could. I told my mom the whole story and she advised me to get therapy. Nathan never tried to contact me again, but sometimes I get the feeling that he's still watching me. Since then, my life has changed. I'm not the same anymore. Now I have trauma and anxiety. I always think that one day when I least expect it, I'll look at the door and I'll find him standing there. What am I going to do with my life now, my God? If I could erase one period of my life, without hesitation, I would choose the year I met Tyler. It happened a long time ago, but the marks he left on me have never faded. Even today, I'm in therapy, take sleeping pills, and look over my shoulder every time I go out alone. Some people overcome trauma with time. I haven't. I was 12 years old and lived in Sacramento, California. I was in 6th grade, and at that time, my only concern was school and after-school activities. During Halloween week, I stayed after hours to help decorate for the school's haunted event. A few friends were with me, along with other students. Among them was Tyler, a boy from my class who had never caught my attention before. He was shy, kind of weird, but funny. We spent that week together, working on the decorations and eating pizza at the end of the day. He seemed harmless, but I didn't know what was coming. 2 weeks later, a group of girls approached me at school, laughing and whispering, "Someone likes you." I was confused. I had never had a secret admirer. They told me that he would message me that night. My heart raced. I was curious. That night, when I lay down, my phone buzzed. It was a message on Messenger from an unknown number. "I need to talk to you." The sender's name made me hesitate. Tyler. I replied without thinking too much, "What's up?" Those seconds waiting for a response felt like forever. Then, a huge paragraph appeared on the screen. He said he had been in love with me since Halloween, that every time I laughed, he felt a warmth in his chest, that he couldn't stand being ignored anymore. And then the question that made my stomach twist, "Do you want to be my girlfriend?" I didn't know what to answer. I barely knew him. It was strange, uncomfortable. I responded carefully, "Tyler, you're nice, but I don't see you like that. Can we just be friends?" The response didn't come right away. He spent minutes typing. My chest tightened. Something told me I shouldn't have replied at all. Then he asked, "Why?" I explained again, but he kept insisting. Every time I tried to end the conversation, he would ask again, "But why?" The next day, things got worse. Everyone at school knew. Tyler had told his friends that I was his girlfriend, that I wanted to be with him, but I was playing hard to get. Worse, his friends started surrounding me, laughing and saying that he was going to kiss me during recess. It was no longer funny. It was scary. I told my teacher everything. She told me to stay inside the classroom during break, and if he approached, to run towards the adults. But that wasn't enough. I went to the principal's office. What happened there left me speechless. The counselor looked at me and smiled. "That's normal. Boys do these things when they like someone. You should be flattered." I didn't know what to say. How could this be normal? How was it acceptable for someone to follow me, surround me, and pressure me for a kiss? In that moment, I understood that I was alone. And then Tyler found out where I lived. The note on the door. On Friday after school, I was finally home trying to forget all of that when I heard knocks on the door. My mom opened it and there was no one there, only a folded piece of paper on the floor. When I saw my name written on the cover, a shiver ran down my spine. My heart raced. The note said, "There's a surprise for you in your family's car." I ran to the window and saw Tyler hiding behind a pole, watching my house. My mom went to my brother's car. She didn't find anything. But that night, the car just stopped working. The mechanic never figured out what happened. And then the photos started. The following week, I was coming home from school when I heard a muffled sound behind me, the click of a camera. I turned around and saw Tyler holding a cell phone, smiling. He was taking pictures of me. I ran. I didn't look back. From that day on, every morning when I woke up, there was a new message from him. "I can't wait to see you. I'm sure you'll look beautiful today." At this point, I was barely sleeping. I woke up scared, wondering how many photos he had of me. I didn't want to go to school anymore, but my mom didn't know what was going on, and I was afraid to tell her. Then, on Saturday night, when my house was quiet and everyone was asleep, something hit my window. The first impact was soft, then louder. A stone. My blood froze. I was on the second floor. How did someone know which room was mine? The impact repeated. I slowly got up, trembling. I opened the curtain and saw Tyler down below with a handful of stones in his hand. He was whispering something. His mouth was moving, but I couldn't hear. I grabbed my phone and saw 4 messages from him. "Why did you leave?" "I just wanted to talk to you. Please, just one kiss. I thought you were different." I blocked him immediately. On Monday, I was called to the principal's office again. For the first time, I felt a sense of relief. Maybe, finally, someone had done something. But no. The counselor just smiled. Boys do these things when they're in love. I wanted to scream. I wanted to run away from there, but all I could feel was an overwhelming, suffocating fear, because I knew it wasn't going to stop. And I was right. I wanted to believe it would stop, but it didn't. The next week, the stalking got even more intense. If before it was just looks and messages, now Tyler seemed to be everywhere. I changed my route home. He showed up in the middle of the way. I went into the school bathroom. He was at the door waiting for me to come out. He followed me all the time. "Why are you running from me?" At recess, I sat in a corner to try to eat without being bothered. But it didn't take long before I heard footsteps stop near me. I looked up and saw Tyler. He was smiling. "Why are you avoiding me?" His voice was too sweet, as if I were the one in the wrong for being afraid of him. "Because you scare me, Tyler." The smile disappeared. He lowered his head, then chuckled softly. "That hurts, you know?" I got up from the table and tried to leave, but he grabbed my arm. Hard. "Let go of me." My voice trembled, but I managed to pull my arm away and ran. I wanted to cry. I wanted to disappear. I couldn't bear living in fear anymore. That night, I slept locked in my room. For the first time, I thought about telling my mom everything, But one horrible thought made me hesitate. What if she didn't believe me? The last straw. On Friday, I was coming home from school when I heard footsteps behind me. Quick footsteps. I knew it was him. My heart started pounding harder. I sped up. He sped up. Then he called my name. Sarah. Wait. I ran. I ran like I never had before. My lungs were burning. My backpack felt heavy. I just wanted to get home. But then I heard something that made me stop. If you keep running, I'll have to come in. Come in. My body froze. He was talking about my house. I turned around and saw Tyler standing in the middle of the sidewalk with a strange look in his eyes. He didn't look like a sixth-grade boy anymore. He looked like a stranger, an intruder, someone who shouldn't be there. What did you say? My voice came out shaky. He smiled. I just want to see you more. You never let me get close. Maybe I'll have to come to you. My stomach churned. I got home crying. My mom saw me and dropped everything she was doing. What happened? I told her everything. Everything. I had never spoken so much and so quickly in my life about the messages, the pictures, the note, the stalking, about what the counselor had said. I braced myself for her to tell me I was overreacting, but she didn't. She turned pale. Then she picked up the phone and called the school. My mom pulled me out of there. By Monday, I no longer attended that school. My mom managed to transfer me to another school without notifying anyone, without giving Tyler a chance to react. He never found me again. He never sent another message. But the truth is, I never felt safe again. My parents noticed something had changed inside me. I was afraid to be alone. I locked my door every night. I woke up at the slightest noise. In the first week at the new school, I had a panic attack in the middle of class because a boy I didn't know got too close. I went to therapy right after that. I was diagnosed with severe anxiety disorder. Today, years later, I still take medication to sleep. I still have nightmares about him. Time passed, but the fear stayed, because I know there are many Tylers out there, and not all girls manage to escape in time. I was never the popular guy. I grew up in Cincinnati, Ohio, and I've always been somewhat introverted, the type who prefers to observe rather than participate. Not that I had trouble socializing, but I always felt like my presence went unnoticed. School was a hell of social exclusion, and even as an adult, I carried with me that feeling of being on the outside looking in. When I turned 23, my life started to fall into place. I landed a good job in the tech field, and after a while of saving, I bought my own townhouse in a quiet neighborhood. Nothing fancy, but for a single guy, it was enough to call home. That's when I decided to try something that had never worked for me before: dating apps. That's how I met Lauren. She was 26 and lived in the same state, about 40 minutes away. Blonde, beautiful, with a sweet smile and an engaging personality. At first, I was surprised that we matched, but when we started talking, everything flowed naturally. We went out for dinner at a small, cozy restaurant downtown, and I, a mess at first dates, thought I was blowing it. But that same night, I got a message from her. I thought you were lovely. Can't wait to see you again. That was enough to send me over the moon. Our relationship progressed quickly. She made me feel special, something I had never experienced before. She called me every day, sent good morning and good night texts, always made sure to say she missed me. At first, it was comforting. Then it started to be a little much. She began asking where I was all the time. If I took too long to reply, I'd get a followed by, "Why are you ignoring my messages?" By our third month of dating, she asked if we could share our location in real time through our phones. I hesitated, but eventually gave in. She made me feel like I owed it to her. It didn't take long for things to start spiraling out of control. One Friday night, I went out drinking with my friends, Jason and Mike, at Jason's house. We were playing video games, chatting nonsense, nothing out of the ordinary. My phone vibrated a few times, but I ignored it. I didn't want to start an argument on the phone while I was with them. But then, Jason's mom came down to the basement with a strange expression on her face. "There's a girl here asking for you." My stomach turned. When I went upstairs, there she was, Lauren, standing in the middle of the living room, arms crossed, staring at me with a furious expression. "Why didn't you answer my messages?" she asked, in such an aggressive tone that even Jason's mom seemed uncomfortable. I tried to calm her down, telling her I was just distracted, but she insisted that I leave with her. My friends didn't know what to do. The atmosphere became tense. I ended up giving in, too embarrassed to stay there, and left with her. In the car, she launched into a speech about how she felt neglected and how she loved me more than I loved her. That set off an alarm in my head. The next day, I decided I needed some space. I sent a message saying things were moving too fast and I needed a break. What I got in return were 40 messages in a row, followed by persistent calls I didn't answer. Then someone started knocking on my door. It was Lauren. "You can't do this to me," she said, crying. I was starting to get scared. I asked her to leave. She stood there for a moment, sniffling, her eyes fixed on me in a disturbing way. When she finally turned her back and left, I felt a temporary sense of relief. But it was just a warning of what was to come. A week later, the real terror began. After that night, I blocked Lauren on all social media. It seemed like the only way out. I knew she wouldn't accept the breakup, but I had no idea how far she would go. In the first few days, the silence fooled me. But then the unknown number calls started. I ignored them, but they came every half hour. Messages began to appear in my email, all with the same tone. "Please talk to me. I love you." "Why are you doing this? You're cruel. I just need to see you one more time." Then came the more disturbing messages. "You think you can just erase me from your life like that? You'll see." At that moment, the word fear took on a different meaning for me. The signs that something was wrong started small. At first, I thought I was imagining things. Objects inside the house seemed to change places. My slippers, which I always left by the bed, appeared in the hallway. The toilet seat was up when I was sure I had lowered it. Silly things. Things that could just be distractions. But then, one night, I came home after work and smelled something strange in the air. Like someone had been there. My eyes scanned the room. Everything seemed normal. I closed the door, locked it, and took a deep breath. Maybe I was just paranoid. But then, when I entered the bedroom, I saw something that froze my blood. My closet was slightly ajar. I was absolutely sure I'd closed it before I left. I stopped in the doorway, feeling my heart pounding in my chest. Every instinct in my body screamed at me to run. But instead, I moved slowly and grabbed the closet handle. A primal, pure fear coursed through me as I pulled the door open. Nothing. The hangers were there, my clothes, my shoes on the floor. No sign of Lauren, but something bothered me. The feeling that I wasn't alone in there. I closed the closet, forcing a nervous laugh, and went straight to the kitchen to grab a beer. I needed to relax. I turned on the TV, put on some random movie, and in the middle of the opening credits, my phone buzzed on the table. A message from an unknown number. "Why are you watching TV so late?" My stomach dropped. I looked around the room, my chest tightening. I picked up the phone with trembling hands and typed, "Where are you?" The reply came in seconds. "I told you you'd see." Without thinking, I ran to the door. Locked. The windows shut. I felt the sweat dripping down my neck as I grabbed my phone to dial 911. That's when I heard the sound. Without thinking, I ran to the door. Locked. The windows shut. I felt the sweat trickling down my neck as I grabbed my phone to dial 911. That's when I heard the sound. A low creak coming from upstairs. My muscles froze. The only room upstairs was my bedroom. And I wasn't alone in that house anymore. I climbed a step, then another, feeling the floorboards creak under my feet. With the phone already connected to emergency, I whispered to the operator, "There's someone in my house." When I reached the hallway, I noticed the door to my room was slightly open. A shadow moved inside. My mind screamed for me to run, but I couldn't. I was paralyzed, caught between the urge to escape and the need to know. Then a whisper came from the room. "Why did you do this to me?" The fear turned into pure panic. I shoved the door open, and there, in the corner of the room, Lauren was crouched inside the closet with a manic look in her eyes and a knife in her hand. She had been there the whole time. Before I could react, she came rushing toward me, the knife gleaming in the dim light. I threw myself back and fell into the hallway, but before she could reach me, police sirens echoed down the street. She hesitated for a second. Just a second. That was all I needed to get up and run downstairs, unlocking the door for the officers. They subdued her while she screamed and thrashed. I could only stand there, frozen, watching her glare at me as they put her in the squad car. It was then that I realized the most terrifying truth of all. Lauren had never left. During those days of silence, she had been there, inside my house, sleeping in my closet, waiting, watching. I'll never get over this. She was convicted of trespassing, attempted murder, and obsessive stalking. But even after all these years, I still sleep with a door track blocking my closet. Because deep down, part of me will never stop being afraid to open that door and find her there again. I never thought something like this could happen to me. We grow up watching stories of obsession and stalking in movies and TV shows, but it all seems distant, unreal, like something that only happens to other people, until it happens to you. My name is Olivia Carter. I'm 24 years old, and today I live on sleeping pills and weekly therapy sessions. But 2 years ago, I was just an ordinary girl, living with my parents in Denver, Colorado, trying to organize my life and find someone special. And that's how I met Brandon. He came into my life through a dating app. Handsome, friendly, with a confident attitude that immediately drew me in. Our first date was nice. We had dinner at a small restaurant downtown, talked about music, travel, and laughed a lot. He seemed normal. He seemed perfect. And that was the first red flag I ignored. The second date came quickly. Then the third. In less than a month, we were seeing each other all the time. Brandon always knew the right words to make me feel special, to convince me that this romance was different. I liked him, but there was something too intense. If I took too long to reply to a message, he'd call me multiple times in a row. If I said I was going out with my friends, he'd ask to come along or ask where I'd be all night. At first, I thought it was just care, just affection. Until one Sunday afternoon, I went to the mall with my best friend Hannah, and when we came out of the store, there he was, waiting for me. He smiled as if it was nothing, said he missed me and decided to stop by to see me. I awkwardly laughed and tried to ignore the chill running down my spine. But after that, he started showing up everywhere. At the grocery store when I went shopping with my mom, outside my workplace, even though I never mentioned where I worked. One time, I went to dinner with my dad at a restaurant miles away from home, and Brandon just showed up saying he was nearby and wanted to see me. That's when I finally realized he knew where I was all the time. The last straw came on some random night. I was at Hannah's house watching a movie. My phone buzzed. "Brandon, I know you're there. Can I come over to see you?" My heart raced. I hadn't told him where I was. I replied, "How do you know where I am?" The response came immediately. "I just know." In that moment, I was sure something was very, very wrong. I tried to break up with him the next day, in person, at a busy cafe. I told him I needed space, that things were moving too fast. He grabbed my hand, squeezing it tightly, his eyes locked on mine. "Are you messing with me, Olivia? After everything I've done for you?" I tried to stay calm. I told him it wasn't personal, that I just needed some time. And that's when he simply stopped talking and kept staring at me. A horrible silence filled the air. A vacant look. He slowly let go of my hand, leaned in over the table, and whispered, "You'll regret this." I stood up and left as fast as I could. That was the day the real nightmare began. I blocked Brandon on all social media. It seemed like the logical solution, but the next day I got an email from him. "Blocking won't change anything. I'll always know where you are." The terror truly hit me when I got home that night. I was alone. My parents had gone out for dinner, and the house was dark and quiet. When I went to my room, I noticed something strange. The door to my closet was open. I always kept it closed. Fear froze me. I looked around, trying to find an explanation. I took a deep breath, went over, and shut the door. The night passed, and no matter how hard I tried, I couldn't sleep properly. The next morning, when I went down to the kitchen, I found something on the porch. A bouquet of red roses. No note. No sender. It was at that moment I knew, without a doubt, that Brandon hadn't left. At that moment, I felt my body freeze. The bouquet of red roses seemed to stare back at me, a silent threat left at the door of my home. My parents hadn't returned from dinner yet, and for the first time in my life, I felt vulnerable inside my own house. I looked around, trying to see if there was anyone on the street. Nothing. Just the wind rustling the tree branches and the sharp silence of the night. Brandon was watching me. With trembling hands, I grabbed my phone and dialed my mom. As soon as she answered, my voice was shaky. "Mom, I think someone was here." She could hear the panic in my voice and said she was on her way. I locked all the doors and windows, ran to my room, and stayed there until they arrived. When my dad saw the flowers on the porch, he tried to calm me down. He said it could just be a coincidence, but I knew the truth. That night, I slept with the light on, but I didn't sleep at all. And then, things got worse. The following week, the calls started. Unknown numbers, long pauses. I never answered. But then, one day, the landline rang. When I picked up, all I heard was breathing. Deep, slow, as if someone was right next to the receiver. I hung up immediately. The next day, an email. "I miss you. Let's talk?" I stopped going out alone. My parents noticed my change in behavior, but I didn't want to worry them any more than they already were. It seemed like Brandon had disappeared for good. Until that night. It was just any Friday. My parents had gone to visit my grandparents in Colorado Springs, and I stayed home alone. I thought it would be a good idea to put on a movie and try to relax. I made popcorn, grabbed a blanket, and sank into the couch in the living room. Around midnight, I paused the movie to go to the bathroom. When I returned to the living room, the remote wasn't where I had left it. It was now on the other side of the couch. A chill ran down my spine. I tried to convince myself I had just misplaced it, but some primal instinct inside me screamed, "Something is wrong." I grabbed my phone and checked the security cameras around the house, which my dad had installed months ago. The footage was deleted. My heart raced. Someone had been there. I turned slowly, feeling the hairs on my skin stand up. And that's when I saw it. The hallway door was slightly ajar. I was absolutely sure I had closed it. For a moment, I froze. The world around me seemed to shrink. All I could hear was my heart pounding in my chest. And then, the sound. A faint creak. The sound of a door slowly opening. My body reacted before my mind. I ran to my room and locked the door. My hands trembled as I dialed 911. "There's someone in my house," I whispered, struggling to breathe. The operator told me to stay on the line and try to hide, but I didn't need to hide. I knew who it was. Brandon. He had never left. Behind the door of my room, I heard slow footsteps in the hallway, a soft touch on the doorknob. And then he whispered my name. Olivia. It was the first time in my life that I felt such pure terror that my legs gave out. "I just want to talk," he said, his voice calm, too calm. And then a loud bang on the door. Another one. And another. I started screaming. I begged the police to hurry. The banging on the door continued. The wood cracked. I knew I didn't have much time. And then the sirens. I heard Brandon curse and run. The police busted through the front door. When they opened my room, I was huddled in the corner, shaking, unable to make a sound. He had run. But the horror didn't end there. It was weeks of investigation. Brandon was arrested a few days later, hiding in the abandoned house 3 blocks from mine. He had a spare key to my house. The police found a mattress in the attic, clothes, food wrappers. He had been living there, watching me. The thought that he had been there while I slept, while I took a shower, while I thought I was safe, destroyed me. Today, 2 years later, I don't live alone anymore. I moved back in with my parents because the thought of being alone paralyzes me. I go to therapy, I take sleeping pills, but no dose of sedatives can make me forget the feeling of having someone hidden in my house, watching me. Sometimes, I still wake up in the middle of the night, feeling a cold shiver, certain that there's someone in my closet, and for a few seconds I can't breathe. Because a part of me will never be convinced that he's really gone. Now that you've heard what no one should, remember, the terror doesn't end here. Subscribe, leave a like, and don't forget to check out the next video playing on the screen, if you dare.